Hello and welcome to my channel. Today is Monday and that means it's True Crime and Makeup Monday. As always, content warning. Shit gets graphic. It's scary. If you don't want to hear about it, then there's time to scroll away to another video. Otherwise, let's get right into it. And today we're going to be talking about Chester Dwayne Turner. He was an American serial killer and sex offender who was sentenced to death for sexually assaulting and murdering 14 women and an unborn baby in Los Angeles between 1987 and 1998. Turner spent much of his adult life homeless prior to his capture. He spent some time in prison for unrelated crimes during his murder spree. In 2002, Turner was sentenced to 8 years in prison for raping a woman earlier that year. While incarcerated, DNA analysis implicated Turner in numerous unsolved murders and rapes. He was sentenced to death in July 2007 for 10 murders and sentenced to death again in June 2014 for an additional 14 or additional 4 murders. Not 14, sorry. He was also found guilty of the death of the unborn child of one of his victims. Prosecutors have called Turner one of the most prolific serial killers in the city's history. Before Turner's identification, the killer was nicknamed the Southside Slayer, a name also used for several other killers active in Los Angeles around the same time as Turner. I wonder if that ever gets confusing. Like, if you give, like, serial killers the same name, because, like, you're talking about a multiple amount of serial killers, like, I wonder if that ever gets confusing. Like, do they ever forget which one they're talking about at the time? Like, how does that work? Because I have short-term memory loss, and I feel like I would forget, like, which one is supposed to be what. So, like, why not give them, like, different names instead of the same name? You know what I mean? Like, oh, this one's in the South Side, this one's in LA, this one's in the Bronx, whatever, and call them something different. You know what I mean? Turner was born on November 5th, 1966 in Warren, Arkansas. He moved to Los Angeles with his mother when he was 5 years old after his parents separated. He attended public schools in Los Angeles and attended Locke High School until dropping out, working for Domino's Pizza as a cook and delivery person as a young man. He lived with his mother until she moved to Utah. After that, he moved around to different homeless shelters and missions. In 1992, Turner began dating Felicia Collier, with whom he had 1 child. Turner has fathered a total of 4 children with separate women, several of whom were raised by his mother after his arrest. I don't know what happened to the moms in that situation, but apparently they did not keep the children. It happens. It's sad, but it does happen. Turner was jailed multiple times in the 1980s and 1990s for theft and drug possession. First from 1987 to 1989, then 1989 to 92, and 93 to 95. He spent a lot of time in jail, and yet he still managed to kill all these people. In 1995, he was arrested and later convicted for car theft. Like, he spent a lot of time in jail, it sounds like, and he still managed to, while he was committing murders, he spent time in jail. And, like, that, to me, is insane. Like, Like, I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know. Just, to me, it's crazy. Like, somebody spent time in prison and yet you still couldn't convict them. How do you manage? This is secret. He was then jailed for assault on an officer and cruelty to an animal on April 9th, 1997. Hey, that's my birthday. I would have been 9. DNA evidence has linked Turner to the murders of 14 women, most of which occurred in a 4-block wide corridor that ran on either side of Figueroa Street between Gage Avenue Sorry, give me just a second. I'm trying not to accidentally get this on my eyeshadow because that would suck. Well, also cleaning it up a bit, you know what I mean? Yeah, know what I mean, Jelly Bean? Anyway, sorry. Turner's first confirmed murder victim was 21-year-old Diane Johnson. Her body was found on March 9th, 1987 by 2 passing motorists in a roadway construction area west of the harbor. She had been raped, strangled, and stripped of her clothes. In June 1987, the body of 33-year-old Elandra Joyce Bunn was found nude, lying in a pile of trash. Her body had been discovered by 11-year-old Alvin McThomas. That would be horrible to see as a child. Oh my God, I would be so distraught after that. An autopsy showed that Bunn sustained battered and bloody eyes, abrasions and lacerations on her head and neck, and bruises on her neck and torso. On October 29th of 1987, the body of 26-year-old Louisiana native Annette Ernest was found lying on a shoulder of a road, partially nude and strangled. She was the daughter of Mildred White, who was friends with Jerry Johnson Triplett, mother of Turner's 5th victim, Andrea Triplett. No other murders that are linked to Turner occurred in 88. In January of 89, the partially nude body of 31-year-old Anita Fisherman Breyer was discovered outside a garage in an alley off Figueroa Street. Her nephew described her as upbeat and happy. Her sister Suzanne was trying to help her through her struggle with addiction. On September 23rd, 1989, the partially nude and strangled body of 27-year-old Regina Nadine Washington was found inside a garage off Figueroa Street. Washington was 6 months pregnant, and the death of the fetus, referred to as baby Washington, was attributed to the mother's strangulation and was ruled a homicide, which it's very uncommon. Like, I mean, you have to be like so many months along, and you have to be able, in some states, I don't know if this is like a universal thing, but in some states, you even have to be able to prove that the fetus was expelled from the body and took a breath in order for it to be considered murder. So that is very unusual, even for that time, that he would be tried and convicted for the murder of a fetus. Does that make sense? Like, it's not something that you hear about happening a lot, which is very interesting to me. I think it's cool as shit. On November 16th, 1992, the 7th known victim, 32-year-old Deborah Williams, was found dead in the 400 block of West 98th Street in Vermont, Visa. A month later, on December 16th, the body of 41-year-old Mary Edwards was found on the 9700 block of South Vagoria Street and Vermont Vista. In April of 93, the strangled and partially nude body of 29-year-old Andrea Triplett was discovered behind a vacant building on Vagoria Street. Although she was 5.5 months pregnant, Turner was not charged. Although she was 5.5 months pregnant, at the time, California law did not consider the fetus viable, so Turner was not charged with this murder. A month later, on May 16th, the body of 29-year-old Desiree Elmay Jones was also found strangled and partially nude in a backyard. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's interesting. I don't know then, like, I don't understand it, and I'm not really sure, like, what the reasoning behind it is if you charge him with one murder of a fetus, why wouldn't you charge him with both murders of a fetus? Like, am I the only one who doesn't see how that makes a lot of sense? Like, he either committed all the murders or he didn't. So, like, it's just 5.5 months pregnant. That's like less than a 2-week difference between the baby he was charged with and this particular fetus. And to me, that's crazy. Like, why? He should have been charged with its murder, in my opinion. If you're going to charge for one baby's murder, you better charge for all the baby's murders. And what was with this thing, like, about pregnant women? Like, I know it's only 2 of, like, the, 10 or 14 I mentioned. But, like, I wonder if, like, that was, like, a trigger, maybe? Like, you know what I mean? Like, they always say that, like, when serial killers kill people, they always want to say that it's because there's, like, a trigger, or they remind them of something. Like, Ted Bundy killed people that looked like his fiance, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, there's always an underlying reason why they do what they do. But is there? So, like, but I think, you know, like, we all know that every serial killer is different. There doesn't necessarily have to be a reason. Just because they say that there usually is, doesn't mean there has to be, like, a reason. You know what I mean? So, don't, like, come at me saying that, you know, oh, well, then what was his reason? What was his motive? And sometimes we never know what their reason or their motive is because they don't want to talk about it. I mean, how would you even explain that to somebody? Yeah, I murdered a bunch of people because I felt like it. Nobody's gonna come out and say that. Alright, give me just a second, guys. I gotta breathe. Okay, where were we? Her brother Frank described her as smart, outgoing, and funny, and stated that before succumbing to her addiction, she worked at a rest home for the elderly. So this sounds like she was a high-risk victim, and I kind of, when I researched this, kind of wondered if that didn't have something to do with them not considering the fetus as a murder. Like, not saying that they were, like, prejudiced or anything, but I'm just saying, like, sometimes I feel like they're overlooked because of what they are. And it's not right and it's not fair, but it does happen. David Allen Jones, a part-time janitor, was arrested for the murders of Williams and Edwards, along with a third murder, that of Tammy Christmas. Jones, who was barely literate, was questioned without an attorney and admitted using drugs with the victims in the areas where their bodies were found. Jones was convicted of the murders in '95 and was sentenced to 36 years to life in prison. Jones had also been convicted of a rape unrelated to the murders during his trial. So another fun, time where somebody was manipulated into confessing to something they didn't do because they don't know how to read or write or whatever. And the sad part is this happens a lot. From all the research that I do, I can tell you it happens a lot. It sucks, but it does happen. Because they can't really, like, and a lot of times too, when illiterate people are interviewed, they don't want to admit that they are in fact illiterate. They don't want to come across to other people as stupid or unintelligent, and they'll pretend like they can read and they'll sign things thinking, so pretending that they understand, and then not realize that what they've basically done is, signed a confession that they murdered 10 people and they didn't do it. They just signed it because they couldn't read it and they didn't want you to know they couldn't read it. On February 12th, 1995, the nude body of 31-year-old Natalie Joan Price was found next to a vacant residence in Vermont Knolls. She too had been strangled to death on November 6th, 1996. The body of 45-year-old Mildred Williams Beasley was found partially nude and strangled amongst the bushes alongside the 110 freeway. Beasley, originally from Michigan, was married and had a teenage son. On February of 1997, 30-year-old Cynthia Annette Johnson, just 1 second, was found strangled to death in the Green Meadows neighborhood of South Los Angeles on February 3rd, 1998. 30-year-old Paula Donnell Vance was found in the Olympia tool business in Azusa. Portions of her murder were taped by 5 nearby security cameras, with the killer visible in several frames as a dark shadow and little more. On camera that police confiscated would have filmed the killer's face, but it cut away moments before he was in frame. Vance suffered from mental illness and was transient. So, see, there again we have someone who's homeless. A high-risk victim. and when I say high risk, what that means is they say that drug addicts, prostitutes, homeless, runaways, all of these people are sadly more likely to experience mistreatment. They're more likely to be abducted. I'm going to pause for just a second so I can do this part here, and then I will be right back with the rest of the story.